Welcome everyone to this edition of the Blackline Brief, where we take the technology news in AI and infrastructure and security, and we make it real for business leaders like you. And we're going to talk about three stories today. One is a cybersecurity AI product that was recently released, named after a Greek god, that did more to scare people than it did anything else. A shoe company that announced it's becoming an AI infrastructure company. What's that about? And a Stanford report that confirmed what I hear in just about every client conversation that's happening today, that 9 out of 10 Americans are more concerned than excited about AI. None of these are actually tech news. They're really business leader news. And today, I've got the right person here with me to help unpack all three. I'm Jody Jankowski. I'm the founder and CEO of Blackline. And today, I'm here with Israel Squires. He is our chief AI officer, and he lives in this space professionally. And if anyone can tell you what's real and what is noise right now, it's going to be him. So Israel, before we get into the stories, give the audience an idea, quick sense of who you are, what you're paying closest attention to in this crazy AI space right now.
Yeah, always good to sit down with you, Jody. And frankly, what's standing out right now is this word autonomous. It is being misused rapidly and increasingly, just creating this gap between the realities of AI, generative AI, and what you're seeing in the market. So you're seeing these big things. We'll talk about mythos. And just like, 5 years ago when ChatGPT came out, there's this wide narrative that this is everything AI and it's going to be autonomous. It's going to do all these things. But now 5 years later, like, oh, it's really good at creating copy and creating an outline for me and maybe, doing more and doing document review. But 5 years ago, that narrative was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be AGI? It's kind of the same thing happening over and over again. And right now what I'm seeing is autonomous this and autonomous that, open claw. Now it's mythos, and they're going to have autonomous cybersecurity. And it is, I think it's the rampant age of misinformation that we live in right now. And it's really bad.
All right, that's perfect. That's a perfect segue right into what the framing, I think, of this is, comes back down to one of the key concepts in the technology intelligence framework, the TIC, the technology industrial complex. They are working on overload overtime, and they are spinning the wheel of fear, FOMO, FUD. That is the way that they sell their licenses. That's the way that they sell their products. That's the way that all the consultants that are out there, it is manufactured credibility. It is intended to drive the sales of licenses to you, and it's intended to drive the consulting fees that are going to get thrown into the freaking toilet for you people that are out there. Business leaders are being hit with these things simultaneously. The noise is incredible. That's exactly what you're talking about. This concept of autonomous, throw a tool at you, throw a new version at you. Why not? Because you're probably going to buy it anyways, because that's just the way that you've been sold to up to this point. But what they're missing is the fact that we're going to expose that. We're going to tell you what to look for and what not to look for, and what's really substance inside of these stories. Because that's really what is happening. This is just the news cycle on overload and steroids. So first, let's talk about mythos and the cybersecurity fear. We're calling it the fear of play. CBS News, when it starts to get to CBS News, when it starts to get to the common media and starts getting into people's living rooms every day, the most credible voices that are out there start raising flags. Now it starts to become something we got to talk about. So, so tell us, is this a real product or is it real capability? And also boil down for us really what's going on with this product.
Yeah. So mythos, right? This is Anthropic's mythos. They released this cybersecurity tool that can do threat detection, vulnerability detection at a level that has never been done before. But what they did then was, okay, if it's going to be able to detect threats while we're all sleeping and report to your IT team or your engineers, well, let's try to take it to the next level and connect it to other systems and create levels of autonomy. And what happened was, when they took it to that next level and created those, they introduced an entirely new layer of threat and an entirely new avenue for those that are looking to attack, right? So those
do bad things, all the threat actors. Yeah.
You created that layer, and that's where it got on the radar of these big names. And that's where it's on CBS. And that's where, gosh, Mythos came out. It's a cybersecurity defensive mechanism, but then it created this new layer for all these other offensive threats. And what we need to do is stop it at that first layer and say, Well, it's pretty darn good at detecting threats and anomaly detection. And it's really good at finding that needle in the haystack that humans aren't. And what it's going to do is then provide that needle and hand that needle right over to a human. It's not going to autonomously try to remedy that and then go to the next step and the next step and the next step. That's marketing. That's fluff. That's the same thing as 5 years ago when ChatGPT was going to change the world and be humans. And now here we are today, like, oh yeah, ChatGPT is like this really cool tool that's highly incompetent and very frustrating. It's if you remember 2021, you remember NFTs? The
Yeah.
NFTs were taking over and they were crazy. And, Gary V had V friends and it was all this crazy, amazing stuff. And I remember sitting there and I was like, when the dust settles, NFTs are just going to be what people used it for artwork, you know, but it was for everything at that. So that's kind of what happens with these tools. Really remarkable technology. But Anthropic has also recognized that the risks in phase two are significant. That's why they haven't released it to the public. They may never release this tool to the public. They release it to strategic companies, big companies, to help them detect those needles in a haystack and maybe over time create a better infrastructure for everybody. And, as it relates to us as an MSP and our small, medium-sized businesses that we serve, in time, when we maybe have that technology capable or accessible to us, it's going to allow us to do our job better. It's going to allow us to do that threat detection better. That's the end result. Everything else is just fluff and marketing because it's cool to talk about and cool to freak everybody out. And like you said, fear, particularly when it comes to AI, is the number one driver behind buying decisions right now. You don't have to prove anything else if you can scare the client. They're scared. They're going to buy. You don't have to show them really.
Yeah. So, and this is where the Innovation Council gap shows up in the technology intelligence framework as well, which is if your strategic decisions about technology are being driven by a vendor, i.e., Anthropic and the model du jour, and it's of course if there's a fear component to it, that is to be the highlight. That is what business leaders ought to see as the trigger point. And you're describing like, is this a real product? What is it going to do for the small, mid-sized business? Is this something that's really going to impact the world? That is just a fear play. That's a fear play. That's telling everybody, okay, I better get these tools and I better spend money. It comes down to follow the money. Where's the money going to go around all of this?
Yeah.
So the urgency is what should be paused.
Yeah, hit pause. And frankly, I don't think they small, medium-sized business owners have really actually been hit quite yet with the vendors, because what happens is Anthropic comes out, Mythos, media, marketing, LinkedIn blows up. And then now what's happening? You've got startup founder A calling his investor and saying, hey, I'm going to start up a cybersecurity company. That's where we're going to be similar to Mythos. And because there's this gap in the market, small, medium-sized businesses. And all of a sudden our clients start getting contacted. Hey, we have this offensive, AI driven cybersecurity technology that's going to change. It's going to replace your IT team. It's going to replace your MS. It's going to do all these things. That's what's going to happen. And that's what our clients and anyone listening to this podcast needs to be aware of. Ask certain questions. Frankly, you're going to get hit with a vendor and ask them this: what workflow is this going to change? How is it going to change it? How are you guys going to track that workflow change? How are you going to monitor it? Like, just ask that and see how they answer.
Right. So that's how we land this one part of the story, which is as business leaders, they're going to continue to be inundated with this kind of information. And based upon the underlying emotional trigger, that is the way that they can gauge whether or not this is something that ought to be thought about in the business right now. It ought to be asking the questions you just said just now. What's AI really going to do for you? As opposed to, screwing up your morning coffee as soon as you see this story pop up, and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta be afraid of that, let alone my competitors and what is happening in my market, what's going on with my team every day. Oh, now I got this existential threat coming from. It's not that it's not real. It's a question of what can you focus on today?
Yeah.
That's why there's companies like ours. We're in between that. We're analyzing it. We're understanding it. So let's move on to something completely different. And now for something completely different, which is from cybersecurity fear and fear mongering to the Allbirds story. It almost reminds me of Flappy Birds. Like it seemed kind of like this sounds comical. Allbirds, which is a sustainable sneaker company. They were a darling of a few years ago. They had this incredible valuation, and now they're going to pivot to AI compute infrastructure. And they're going to run data centers now. It's a shoe company.
Yeah.
Okay. help me with this one.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't want to even spend the time to understand it, but I figured you might.
Yeah.
I've already done it. So tell us, is this something that we're missing, or is this all noise, or is there some signal in the air?
If there was, stand-up comedians that focused on artificial intelligence, like this would be one of the things that they would just be, if there was the Dave Chappelle of AI, he'd be all over this. And
Yeah.
sorry, Allbirds, like nothing, nothing against you, but the reality here is that anyone who spends time in AI, like it wouldn't take you long to recognize that there's a massive opportunity in infrastructure, right? You see, the reason why NVIDIA became the most valuable company in the world a couple of years ago was because AI just exasperated and sped up the closing of the infrastructure capability that we have, meaning we needed more of it. So all these data centers started popping up, hundreds of billions of dollars put into data centers. And what Allbirds is looking at is GPUs as a service. Like that's what they're trying to convert to. Now, a shoe company converting to that is wild. But when you look at the opportunity, it's like, well, they had access to investors that were willing to put in $50 million for them to try this opportunity. And probably what they put in their deck was much more lucrative than selling shoes. Now, the problem is that it's easy to kind of get into the narrative of AI, not easy to actually get into the real execution of AI. I equated this when I saw it, after, even before diving in, was like, this is no different than a lot of these PE firms over the last few years that have bought legacy data centers because they're like, oh my gosh, look at the opportunity. We need more infrastructure. We need more space. I'm going to buy these legacy data centers and it's a gold rush and I'm going to be rich forever, just like Jerry Jones and striking oil back in the day. So here's the problem though, is that I'm going to give you the data center example. You buy a legacy data center. You know what those things were designed for? To manage websites, meaning that they really only had capacity for like 5 to 10 kilowatts per rack. AI, really in any realm, you're at like 40 to 80 kilowatts per rack. So when you're buying one of these old legacy data centers, what these PE firms didn't realize what they bought into was, holy smokes, we've got this building in space now, but now we have to figure out how to manage this compute that this building isn't ready for.
That kind of power usage.
Yeah. So they have to figure out how to cool them with giant fans that would be so loud that you couldn't do anything in the building at all. So they're like, okay, now we got to look at water. Holy smokes, that's super expensive. Now we have to like negotiate with the local municipality or whoever it is to try and figure out how to get more water. And you're like, okay, so we spent $150 million on this legacy AI center. We got to put in another $400 million in order for it to be AI ready. That's what I see when I see.
All right. So with that, and I love that perspective. What does this mean and what can we glean out of this for the small, mid-sized business leader? Literally, there is something in there that says, look for this, or when you see this, because there's a principle there that I think applies to the way in which you approach a innovative technology like AI, right? So there's going to be this, it seems so absurd. Okay. It seems so absurd from a technology perspective, but there's a principle in it that would apply to every business leader who has to make a decision about innovation. What comes to mind?
Here's what it is. Here's the key word of this. You're thinking data infrastructure and power. And I own a business that has 100 employees. This should continue to hammer home the point that your data environment, your infrastructure environment is going to be hybrid, meaning you're going to have to delineate and decide what data is going to be on-prem, what data is going to be in the cloud, what your strategy is going to be. Maybe working with an Allbirds and getting access to their GPU as a service. That could be a pathway for you. That traditional model of, 15 years ago was moving everything into the cloud. And even the last few years, we've seen business after business after business be convinced that in order to activate AI, we move everything to the cloud. What they need to look at is all of these companies, all this money going into this infrastructure. The why. At the end of the day, like what's the end output that they're trying to achieve? They're ultimately trying to sell this infrastructure to you. Are you going to just, and how are you going to buy? How is that going to change your current infrastructure? And I can guarantee you, I say this with 100% certainty, that the businesses that are going to win have an ability, probably because they worked with us, to decide what their overall structure is going to be. And it's not going to be everything's in the cloud. It's going to be a hybrid environment. And the reason why is because that's going to be the only fiscally responsible way to do it. That's what they need to think about. So look at this, laugh at it, find your AI Dave Chappelle and see what, use an AI tool and have them put together.
And I'm not trying to throw shade at the people at Albert's all, because what it really still highlights, it highlights the same principle. This is one of the tick warning signs of shiny object. If it's the shiny object, you, as a business leader, you see the shiny object and then you move into that. Well, there's cost associated with it. There's organizational costs as well as capital that has to go into that, because you're pivoting a business into a technologically focused business realm as opposed to selling shoes. That kind of pivot that feels like it's fashion, right? It feels like it's fashionable to say that we do something from the AI perspective. I would warn business leaders in the same way that if you come across your desk something that points to AI, just because you can tell your board, you can tell your partners, you can tell your employees, we're now going to jump on that bandwagon. Make sure there's some substance there, because of all the releasing of what they've said they're going to do, it's really hard to swallow that you're going to have these disciplines and this mindset in a business towards one outcome that you're going to pivot into a completely 180-degree. Well, business leaders, is that really actually what you want to do in your businesses as well? Be careful when it comes to AI or anything innovative.
Yeah.
Jump into the NFT world, jump into the metaverse, jump into VR and AR. Oh my gosh, we're going to be all AR participants in the metaverse. I mean, that wasn't that long ago.
That was right before AI hit.
Yeah, exactly. So from business leader standpoint, get some counsel, get some clarity. Please do not fall victim to the latest news cycle. It is not going to serve you well. All right, let's talk about the last story here. So here's the one I want to get some depth into, which is the recent Stanford annual report that they do on AI. Frankly, AI has got a really bad reputation. One thing, I'm not sure if it was in this report specifically, but that AI is less popular than ICE. And the amount of what's happening in that whole realm,
Right.
not to comment on that whole thing,
Right.
but safe to say that is not very popular, and AI is less popular than that. Okay, that says something. And AI has got a real marketing and branding problem at this point, right? That only 10% of Americans say they're more excited about that. That is a real challenge, where it's just the opposite in China. China has got like 90%, like it's very high positivity around the use of AI and what it can mean for the future. So, so on the inside, right? So you're on the inside, from a technology perspective, is also how these tools get used. So what's your honest read on this, and why is the gap big?
Yeah. I mean, so the Stanford report, it's awesome. I'm glad that they do this. There's multiple layers to the gap. For us, the United States, frankly, is behind in terms of infrastructure and governance. Europe is doing really good in that regard. And because they've been ahead of it, right? Like with GDPR, for example, and then multiple layers of AI governance, it's given a little bit more safety and security to the users in Europe. We haven't done that in the United States. So in the United States, folks are still pretty fearful about the confidentiality risks, the data risks. We're seeing that with our clients. We do workforce surveys with all of our clients that engage us for AI services. We just did one this week, and the report came back that every single employee is using AI. They all believe in AI. They actually they think it's going to change their workflows in really awesome ways. Saying like anywhere from like 5 to 10 hours a week. But every single one, or 90% of them, were fearful of the confidentiality risks, fearful of actually implementing it into their workflows. Because I think we've gotten to a point where everyone's used these tools enough where they see they make a lot of mistakes. There is a lot of risks. How do you actually get these things in? So they're feeling that in their own personal lives. And then they're seeing more negative headlines than positive headlines. And then they're not seeing our government really do anything about it at all thus far. So it's kind of exasperating this problem, and it's building up. And then, you kind of have two different user groups. You got the folks in Silicon Valley that are able to test these really awesome technologies in enclosed environments with clean data. And, the venture capitalists are all standing around with their pom-poms, and it's good. And then that's what gets put into LinkedIn. Like, this is great. And then these people that are actually in the work environment, that's not what they're experiencing. They're experiencing dirty data environments. They're experiencing broken workflows that are now being augmented with AI, which means that you're just taking a broken workflow and
and
making it
and, and
break
adding
faster.
adding automation to
And
it, make it faster, make the brokenness accelerate inside of an organization.
exactly.
Right.
So it just keeps people keep getting pinged with they're seeing this, but then they're experiencing something different. So the trust is just going down. And I kind of think like the shortest version, like that's what's happening. Um, Now, again, with our clients, once you get them through that process and you work through and you educate them and you go through our, what we call our Blackline AI compass, it helps significantly because you get people to just ignore the hype, ignore the Silicon Valley headlines and all the really cool things about what AI is going to be one day. And it's just like, oh, I'm just going to use this tool to create performance reviews and it's going to save me 5 hours a week. And that's awesome. And it's really accurate. And then you stack those things up and then their trust starts to go up. But that's not what's happening with most businesses. They're really implementing these tools way faster than they should be.
Yeah, way ahead of the governance that ought to be put into place that they would have in any other aspect of their business. if they if they were to implement a new accounting system or implement a new inventory management approach, or they would implement some type of a compliance infrastructure around because they're in the financial planning business or whatever, they would have very specific guardrails around anything that they implement technologically or not. And what I've been seeing, exactly what you just described, that's a governance challenge. It doesn't matter what the tick is doing. So the tick is going to tick, the pom pom. I love that. The VCs with their pom pom. Oh my, this is going to be the future. And you need and because they do that because their investment in that firm, that valuation goes up because they're looking for a liquidation event. They're looking for a money event. Well, the way that you drive that up is you drive that up because you're getting money through sales. You're getting money through appreciation in the stock value because of all the fancy stuff that those guys do. But it doesn't drive value to the small, mid-sized business or the common business person. You have to do exactly what you said. What is the specific outcome that we need? This is a fantastic tool. These tools are fantastic, intelligent. They're going to automate and create such super users in our knowledge workers to eliminate tasks that are mundane and not suited for humans. And so what I would like to see is, I think the skepticism is real, and it should be.
Yeah, it's rational.
It's rational to
Like
be
there's just
skeptical about a technology that's got a bad rap. But at the same time, don't let that bad rap quell the optimism of something that could really make a difference in your business. But it can't be done. Like you said, you do your surveys, people are using it, they're excited about it, but they're also fearful about X, Y, and Z. That is a lack of leadership governing the use of a tool. You've got to be extremely intentional
yes.
about that. How can people that are maybe watching this, how can they reduce that fear level? Let's just talk about that. If there's a way that we could give a vantage point of reducing fear around AI, what would you do?
I mean, first off, stop calling it artificial intelligence, call it augmented intelligence. Stop talking about autonomy and just talk about workflows and like the output that you're trying to achieve with a workflow. Can we take workflow X and turn it into workflow Y by implementing this tool? And the output of that is going to save Z amount of hours. And over time, that's going to allow us to be more profitable. Like that's what you need to do over and over again. And then as you're going through that, you're asking yourself the question, what risk profile is created when we change this workflow? Okay, there's a new risk profile. So let's govern that. Now we're going to move to the next workflow. And it's the same process over and over again. And then you have a governance layer on top of everything that you're doing. Like,
So let's diffuse governance layer. Let's talk about that really quick. What does that look like practically?
yeah,
I got some ideas. I want to hear what would govern AI to help with that?
yeah. The real answer is leadership, right? The deliverable answer is an AI policy and training and continuous training and understanding as you're augmenting a workflow that you're going to wrap that with a new a new addition or new section in your policy to make sure that it's governing that change, a new module in your training to ensure that you're governing that change and you have things in place. But the reality is that people are going to be people. So they're going to respond to leadership. And if a leader is constantly saying, hey, this is our way of doing things, well, we're doing things the right way. So when you use the tool, here's the governance layer that I'm going to repeat. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. When you use this tool, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, because that's the way that we do things at our business. That's the critical component.
I love that because it ties directly into the people pyramid of the AIM framework.
Yeah.
Which is at the foundation of the people pyramid, because people are the ones who are using the technology. At the foundation is mindset. It's just mindset. It's just seeing what you just described, that when we put in technologies, we need to have governance, a policy, some training, intentionality. It's not just throw tools at people and expect them to know how it's supposed to work and what potential impact there can be. That's leadership. Empowering leaders to understand that that's the role they need to play in this brave new world to become tech-enabled leaders. That's what you're talking about. And like, get them to then, there's a layer right above mindset, and that's the enablement layer. That's where you train them. That's where you give them guidance. That's where you give them clarity about what the tool is, can and can't do, and what you, which is your policy, your AI policy, what you can and cannot do with this AI technology in this business. That's 101. I just was on a call with a company in China yesterday, and they were asking my opinion about the use of these tools. And they came to the same conclusion independently, but they wanted to do some verification with market research, governance, that the tools themselves are highly capable, and the amount of evolution and innovation which is occurring in these tools is so rapid that the distance between people who could benefit from this and where the tools are is so great and keeps getting wider. Okay. That we need to put a governance layer on top of that to say who's using it, why, what data is being pulled in. Like you said, you got dirty data, crap data. It's just it's gonna accelerate these poor workflows and this poor data. So I love it. This is exactly how the tick operates. It wants you to not make it. They want to drive the strategy. They don't want the business leader to drive that strategy.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and one thing that I have to harp on is that this first layer of governance, policy, that training, that leadership, and that just kind of changing your mindset, potentially changing it, but having that growth mindset towards that, it's not sexy and it's boring. There's I say AI policy, and I know the thought bubble in most folks is like, yeah, how many people read privacy policies, and like and they're right. It's not just putting together a piece of paper and emailing it out. It's so much more than that, and it is not sexy. It is just the foundational concrete to your house that no one's ever going to see, but it's so critically important. This fun stuff is going to be when you're talking about governing your data and you're implementing a new system that's going to actually manage how you're utilizing all your tools and your token spend. And you're looking at this cool dashboard as a CEO in 3 years, and you're just like, holy smokes. Okay. So we have 742 licenses of this tool. This is how they're being utilized. This is how much time we're saving. This is our token spend on it all. This is what our infrastructure spend. Like, businesses that do it right are going to get there, but you are not going to get there if you don't do this mundane kind of painstaking restructuring of change management, and it's so important. If you don't do it, you're setting yourself up to fail.
Okay, so let's land this episode. We covered quite a lot of ground. We got the mythos, we got Allbirds and what that meant, and then we have the Stanford research, which tells us about the unpopularity. So at this moment in time, in the end of April in 2026, what would you have as a wrapper on what we've been talking about in terms of what action should somebody watching this take tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, audit yourself. I mean, if you're really, are you doing AI? We're buying AI. Or are you changing workflows? Like, how are you even talking about AI internally? Are you saying this is how we're doing AI? Or are you saying this is how we're changing these particular workflows? If you are someone who's still saying this is how we're doing AI, you need to change that now. It has to change. You need to identify what workflows you're actually doing and changing and augmenting. Talk about that. Like, that needs to be, it's sort of subtle, but it's significant. Change that, because that's going to be a driver towards that accurate change management that needs to happen. And then the final wrapper is, because I started with this, I'm going to end with this. Anytime you see autonomous, for now, we may do a podcast in a year, maybe 2 years. But anytime you see autonomous, just giggle at it because it's mostly bullcrap. Like it really is. Like none of these generative AI tools are going to ever be autonomously utilized, in my opinion. These are human centric. In my opinion, generative AI is the most human centric technology ever created. It's so reliant upon humans. It's not going to be autonomous ever. AI will be. Generative AI will not be.
All right. I like that. That's good guidance that the tick is going to try to continue to convince you otherwise, that you can automate everything in your business using these tools and you can eliminate humans out of the loop. I would agree with you on that. I feel like the level of judgment, which is necessary for anything to do anything autonomously, is just nowhere near on the roadmaps of any of these tools. They're going to try to tell you that, and then you're just going to keep ticking up your license spend, and you're not going to get the results that you want. But you know, the truth is, you don't know what the results are that you need because you're not going through the process of understanding why do I care and what does it do in my business to actually move the needle. And that's what I would lead with: the tick, understanding what those warning signs are, because once you understand that, this other noise starts to become less impacting to you emotionally. That's number one. We got a guide on that. In the link, you can go and you can find out more information about technology intelligence, being able to spot these things. We also have an AI readiness guide, which is intended to exactly the things we've been talking about today. The idea is to see what your state is and answer these kinds of questions so that you can talk to your team and you can talk to other leaders. You can find out, what are we actually wanting to use AI for? That's the workflows. That's the outcomes. That's the enablement of the team. That's the mindset. That's the policies. This is all blocking and tackling. It really isn't that difficult. You just have to do it. It is not a silver bullet kind of attack. It's much more dangerous. If there is danger, that's the danger. The danger is ignorance. So move into this, just being a little bit more educated. We can help you get there. And then there's TQ training, the technology intelligence training, which is leadership training. It's not technology training. It's leadership. It's understanding these ideas that we're talking about because they're not technical. I know it sounds counterintuitive. It's technology leadership. It's not technology leadership. It's not technologies. So anyways, on that note, thank you so much for joining Izzy and I. It's fun doing this. We'd love feedback as well as interaction. Like what do you want to hear? What do you want to talk about? What's on your mind? This is not intended for us to talk about what we know. That's not valuable to you and it's not valuable to us. What's the practical application of AI AI or anything technological for that matter? What do you want to hear about? What would you like to see? What topic would you like to see talked about from technologists that have been in this business for a long time? And we help companies like yours all the time. Izzy, anything else?
No, always good to be here.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Till next time.
Bangarang Rufio. That one.